Good morning. In this week's Torah portion, God tells Abraham, Lech, Lecha, go to the land of Israel that I will show you. In other words, God is telling Abraham to make aliyah. Whenever a Jew goes to Israel, even if he's coming from a place that geographically is higher than Israel, we call it aliyah because they are going up. They are making a spiritual elevation to the land of Israel. Very much like when one is called to the Torah for an aliyah, they go higher onto the bima, both physically and spiritually, and it's called an aliyah. But when God tells him, go to the land of Israel, and promises him, I will bless you, I will make you into a great nation, you will become renowned throughout the world. 7 verses later, in verse 10, Abraham arrives in the land of Israel. And what happens? A famine breaks out in the land of Israel. And Abraham has to go down. Vayered Avram Mitzrayim. Abraham has to go down, the opposite of Aliyah, to the land of Egypt, a place which is not spiritually conducive for Abraham or any Jew to survive the famine. And the question is, why is that right after Abraham is told to make Aliyah, he has to make Yeridah, he has to go down to Egypt? And perhaps the Torah is teaching us a very important lesson through the first Jew, that in life many times we are on a journey upward, trying to go higher, trying to ascend. And suddenly there are circumstances which force us to go down. But just like Abraham didn't get discouraged, disappointed, and didn't despair, but he understood that this was a descent for a higher ascent, which will ultimately lead him to fulfill his destiny in this world. So too every one of us, when we experience a downturn or a detour in our lives, as they say, when you hit rock bottom, sometimes it's because you have to go up. And therefore, do not lose hope or faith, but carry on your journey, even if you have to go down to Egypt as Abraham did, because ultimately it will lead you to the place that you're destined to arrive at. I remember a few years ago, Bernie Marcus, the founder of Home Depot, came to speak at the Palm Beach Synagogue to our students at the Solomon Leadership Program. And here's a man in his 90s who has become extremely wealthy through the Home Depot stores, the chain, which is literally throughout the country. And he told his personal story that when he graduated high school, he wanted to go to college and go to medical school and become a doctor. That was his dream, that was his passion. But because of the quotas, he could not get accepted as a Jew into college, into medical school. And so his second choice was to become a pharmacist. So he went and studied pharmacy school and became a pharmacist. But after practicing being a pharmacist, he was very unhappy. So he quit being a pharmacist and went to California, went into business. After a few years in business, he was fired from his job. He said he was at the lowest point of his life. Didn't get to be a doctor, didn't get to be a pharmacist, and now failed in business. And it was then that he came up with the idea of Home Depot, found an investor, and today the rest is history. And his message to the students is, when life throws you a curveball, when things don't work out the way they were meant to work out in your mind, the way you planned it, don't lose hope, don't lose faith. Realize it's a journey, and sometimes, like Abraham, you have to go down to go way up and become an Abraham, to become the father of the Jewish nation. Have a wonderful day.